this IQ Midlands branch event, where we're going to talk about some new resources that's going to be produced from Quinjack, and I'm delighted to say that we've got some members of the working group who developed these new resources on the panel today. So what I'll be doing is I'll get them to introduce themselves shortly. But I just wanted to run through a few slides initially, just to talk about what Quinjack is for those who may not be familiar. And then we'll actually start to talk about the actual resources that's being produced. So thanks again for everyone taking the time to join this IQ Midlands branch event today. And I hope you find this the kind of CPD of value to you. And so without further ado, we'll just go through some basic slides that I've put together to talk about this this Quinjack. So again, for those who may not be familiar, Quinjack is the acronym for the Quarries National Joint Advisory Committee. Now you can see why we call it Quinjack. It's a collaboration that includes the health and safety executives. So the HSE do participate in this work. Volunteers from industry, we as training providers, professional institutions, trade bodies, trade unions to attend these working groups wherever possible, and we try to maximize the sort of spread of people who attend these working groups. So Quinjack is primarily focused on the promotion of health and safety in all aspects and sectors of the quarrying and associated products that we do. The guidance that's produced by Quinjack does accompany industry regulations and approved code of practice, or ACOP. So it's seen as an extension of that. So you might find that health and safety executive inspectors may be asking you about certain Quinjack guidance, and have you completed self-audits and things like that. So, you know, never be surprised if they were to mention Quinjack to you. Just where you'd find this guidance, if you go to quinjack.com, you'll find a website, and the website is split into separate areas of information. So you can find guidance or self-audits that's been produced by Quinjack over many years by these experts, such as areas as contractors, drilling and blasting. And there is actually a working group at the moment that's looking at blasting guidance. Geotechnical, which are a number of groups that's working on guidance that fits into geotechnical. Leadership and workforce engagement, occupational health, fixed and mobile plant, core regs, and road haulage. So the website's been recently launched, and for those of you who may have a Quinjack app as old, the Quinjack app is no longer working. It's actually been removed from the app stores now. Basically, we use the website that will orientate itself to any device that you're using. So we no longer need to pay for an app and update a separate device. It's all on the one website. So any new guidance or information just goes to Quinjack. So again, just some key points on Quinjack. It is the Quarries National Joint Advisory Committee, focused on the health and safety, all aspects of quarrying and associated industries, and is committed to making the industry a safer place through raising training standards and competence. And again, go to quinjack.com or .co.uk. We also have a LinkedIn group for Quinjack, so if you're wanting to find out what's happening regarding working groups, any new guidance that might be being produced, or just generally what's happening, you can use the Quinjack LinkedIn group or go to the website. Self-audits is going to be one thing that you'll see more and more from Quinjack, and there's a couple just put onto the screen there, just so you're aware that fixed plant and mobile section have produced workplace transport and pedestrian safety interface, which is a really good self-audit to go through. And helps you create useful action plans of things to put in place if you identify needs for improvements. And also workforce involvement and engagement, so pretty much around regulation 40 of the core regs, there is another self-audit to go through. And what we're going to be talking about today is a new one that's actually going to be released, which is, as you saw right at the top of this slide, and why you've attended today, is about mental wealth and well-being. So there'll be a new self-audit being published, as well as some additional signposting of where you can seek help and guidance around these aspects. If you ever want to go to the website and just say, how do I get involved? I'd like to be a volunteer. I'd like to get involved in these things. We've made it nice and simple. Just go to the Quinjack website. You'll see a tab right at the top that says get involved. If you want to know what working groups are happening right now and who's involved in those working groups, what they're looking at, again, just at the top of the website, there's working groups. So you can click on that and find out what's happening right now. And if you want to get involved, click the next tab along. So thanks for that. I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of what Quinjack is doing and why are Quinjack looking at this particular topic. And that way you can understand how this has all come about. And like I said, we have members of the working group on this call today that will come to as we talk through today. And you know, these were people who volunteered their time to help put all this together. Right, so we'll end up, stop sharing that now. So again, thanks for everyone for joining. My name is Anthony Elgie. I'm chair of the IQ Midlands branch, and I work for Minerals Matter, which is also working on a number of different projects and things to try and help the industry regarding future outreach for careers and inviting people to join the sector, standards, education, and also partnerships with associations who can help us. So on the call today, I'm delighted to introduce you to a few of my colleagues who worked on this Quinjack guidance. So I'm going to ask them all to introduce themselves. So remember, we're all on mute at the moment. So I'll come to Julie Edwards. If you could introduce yourself to the group and what you do, Julie, please.
Yes, my name's Julie Edwards. I work for Mineral Products Qualification Council. I work for MP Skills, which is the training arm of the business. I've worked in the industry for a number of years. From the age of 16, actually, I've done various roles, but the role that I do at the moment is an industry trainer. I am involved in the Quinjack committee as I am a mental health first aid instructor. I did my training back in 2019, and it's to be honest, it's probably the best thing I've ever done in regards to developing myself and also developing everybody else around me as well. So that's just a little bit about me. So I'm quite excited to be part of this committee. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Julie. And Phil Basin, I'll come to you now.
Hi everyone. So I'm Tarmac's health manager. So health and wellbeing is very much in my remit. Part of the wider health, safety, environment, quality team. I've been with the company for 28 years, I think now, in various roles. So yeah, part of my role is to kind of put initiatives like this in place, make sure that we're looking after our people. Yeah, happy to be involved in this group and try and help the industry move forward.
Thank you, Phil. Mr. Bush, Mr. Roy Bush.
Yeah, I'm Roy Bush. I'm the Director of Health and Safety for the British Aggregates Association, former HM Inspector of Quarries. A few people on here probably know me in that role from a few years ago. British Aggregates Association's absolutely delighted to be involved in this, and in fact we have a total commitment to Quinjack and will always support it in everything it does.
Thank you very much for that, Roy. So the way we're going to do this session today is I want to ask the panel a number of questions, which hopefully generate some questions with you all about this important topic of mental wealth and well-being. We might have a look at the audit as it is now, but if you've got any questions that you're wanting to ask, or you're wanting to sort of learn more about this topic and how you can help, especially with mental health awareness week coming up next week, you might want to do something in your business around that. you know, this self-audit and the guidance document that sits alongside it is a fantastic way of introducing this topic and actually engaging with your workforce regarding sort of filling in this self-audit and finding out where you are as a business, maybe create an action plan on the back of it. So Roy, if you don't mind, I want to come to you first and just talk about, you know, you've had some experience with these self-audits, not just this one, but some other ones as well. You know, what do you see the value of these self-audits being?
I think the thing with them is, I mean, I've used them in with another hat on, as you probably know. I've got other hats that I wear, and I've actually used them on site. They are very good at pointing you at the things that you really need to look at, showing you where the holes are in what you think you might have got. The one thing I would say about them is you've got to be brutally honest when you fill it in. It's no use ticking boxes as yes when you sort of think of, well, it's not really, but I'll put yes anyway. But no, put no, because there's just no point. If you're not brutally honest with yourself, you won't get out of it what you need to get out of it. And it's designed to help you. So use it in the way it was designed. And if you do, they're absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. We did one a few years ago on the isolation side of it, and it was a particularly interesting. I've done quite a few others, but this particular one was really good. We went through that and we found an enormous number of holes in the company's processes. They were able to take that on board and they plugged every single one of them, and we just kept redoing the audit until we got all the answers as yes. And that's how to do it.
Fantastic, Roy. Thank you. And Phil, you know, in a business such as Tarmac, how would you see, you know, the self-audit helping in the Tarmac business? So obviously your experience of helping to put it together.
Yeah, and I guess we kind of maybe put the cart before the horse, because we obviously didn't have the self-audit when we started this journey. But I think just like Roy said, you know, you've got to be honest. There's no point in sort of being over optimistic. You need to know where the problems are. It is a really good way of just identifying where the gaps are, and then you can start looking at a strategy to try and fill those gaps, making sure that you're compliant, making sure that you're doing all that you need to be doing, really.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. And Julie, coming to you now then. So when we've put the self audits together, obviously we had a lot of to-ing and fro-ing regarding the questions. How did your experience of being a mental health first aider and a first aider trainer, how did that sort of play into helping the questions in the self audit?
I think for me, it's understanding the right language to use when it comes to mental health. I know we did do a lot of backwards and forwards and trying to get the language right. So because mental health, can be very positive and obviously can be something that's quite negative sometimes in people's lives. So making sure we got the right language in there was really important for me. And I think we did get there. So thanks very, very much for everybody's help on that as well.
Absolutely. And I think one of our other group members was Chris Rowan from the University of Derby. And for those of you who may be aware of Chris went through a very traumatic time in his career, and he has some strong opinions regarding the language that's used. And it's one of the reasons that, you know, when I talk about mental wealth, people think I'm talking a typo. But I'm not. We've excuse me, we've made that deliberate, that we're talking about the fact that it's mental health to some people as sort of negative connotations and negative perceptions, and this is something that Chris Rowan was very passionate about and articulated it very well, that in his experience, unfortunately, and we are talking a number of years ago, but it was perceived about his the impact that it had on his mental health. When he explained it to people, you know, they was treated negatively. So we've changed the language now, and we're talking about the fact that you can invest in your mental wealth. as well as things that do take toll on it. And we all have mental wealth levels all through the day, all through our lives, and it changes constantly. Simple things like getting 8 hours sleep is an investment in your mental wealthness, but then there's things that can also take a toll on it. So that's why one of the language has changed around that. And you know, you might see there's a lot of talk I've seen around social media now talking about mental fitness, and the fact, again, you can invest in your mental fitness. You can become fit physically, you can also become fit mentally, and obviously things take a toll on it. If you don't do anything to help with your mental fitness levels, it will decrease, and you'll find that things can take a toll on it far easier. The same as if you don't do anything with your mental physical health, then you might find simple tasks more taxing, more difficult to do. But then if you go to the gym and work out and take steps to improve your health, physical health, you can handle things better, and you can perform more and things like that. So you might see, again, this whole thing is constantly evolving and changing, and we obviously learned so much over the years. So Phil, I just want to come back to you now, and again, just before I come to you with the next question, please don't allow me to just keep asking everyone questions. You know, come on, group, you're here for a reason. We've got these experts panel here, so please utilize them, put questions in the chat box, raise your hand if you want, and do encourage interaction, because you'll get more out of it. Phil, can you give us a bit of an overview of the way that Tarmac, because again, I've had the pleasure of working with you at Tarmac, and you know, Tarmac, I think, did grab this by the reins and sort of make some changes quite quickly and quite deeply as well in the business. Can you just explain how Tarmac went about that and why?
Yeah, I think I said earlier, you know, I think we probably put the cart before the horse. So we recognised that we needed to do something. We needed to start talking about mental health, as you said, you know, not as a negative thing. So one of the first things we did was to identify somebody to help us with what we wanted to do, and that was Mates in Mind, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. You know, their remit right from the beginning was to get the construction industry talking about mental health, to break that stigma of talking about mental health that we're so bad at doing, particularly male, the male members of the population. And obviously we're a male-dominated workforce, so we thought Mates in Mind was a really good fit with what we were trying to do. And the initial work was very much around raising awareness, so just getting people to understand what we mean when we talk about mental health, looking for understanding what it is, the fact that everybody has mental health, you know, good or bad. Also to look out for signs that you might be struggling with your mental health, that you might be having issues, and looking out for those signs in your colleagues and other people that you know and work with. So very much just a high level awareness piece. And then we started to look at training, so upskilling people managers to be able to have good conversations about mental health, to have a better understanding of mental health and mental health issues. Again, looking for signs of people who might be struggling, and then knowing what to do in terms of signposting. And one of the key things that we have in place, and I'm sure a lot of other companies do, is an employee assistance program. It's not the silver bullet, but it's certainly a really good thing to have in the toolkit. And you know, we've had an EAP for years, long before we started focusing on mental health, but it's a really important resource to have for all our employees. So you've actually got somewhere to signpost people to. There are lots of external resources as well, but having something in-house is so important. And then we also looked at mental health first aid training. So, you know, as Julie mentioned, you know, it's a fantastic set of skills to have if you're trained as a mental health first aider. So we've got a number of them in the business, not enough. You know, we are bringing them through all the time. But again, it's just having another area of support that's available to people to reach out to. You know, mental health first aiders aren't trained as clinical experts. We're not counsellors. We're not therapists. But certainly we can be a really good place to start that conversation if you're struggling, and just trying to help our colleagues, really.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for that. And Roy, I just want to come to yourself now, because as the British Aggregates Association, and obviously you're the Health and Safety Director for the BAA, you talk to a lot of independents and SMEs where, you know, Tarmac have been able to sort of bring in the mates in mind and recruit internally for some mental health first aiders, which is brilliant. But when you talk to the BAM membership, some of the smaller companies and things like that, they might perceive that as being difficult and quite happy to heap it onto the sort of it's too difficult pile. How do you find when talking to your membership, you know, that their attitude towards this important topic?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, actually, Anthony. We've got a range of members. We've got you know, membership from the mega switched on, who have really grasped the issue right from the beginning, and have contributed and helped us, and certainly helped me in my approach to the working group. And we've got that all the way down to what you might colloquially call the one-man bands, who really, I wouldn't say it's not even on the too difficult to do pile, it's on the what's that pile. So we've got a huge issue when it comes to awareness raising. And I think, you know, you've got to start somewhere, otherwise you end up with it on the too difficult pile, and you never do anything with it. So what we've done is we partnered with HSE's Working Minds campaign, and became a Working Minds champion. And we did that so that we could use a lot of the HSE's material and put that out to our membership, either through our HSE newsletters, Health and Safety newsletters, general newsletters to members, and also through my weekly or monthly, whatever we can get around to doing. We do them as often as possible, the light bites, which are just simply one paragraph reminders to people of some of the things they should be looking at. We focus fairly heavily on mental health issues for some time. We raised the issue at a conference that will be discussed. As is always the case, it's like Quinjack. You're often preaching to the converted at events like that, because the people that are engaged are the people who come along, and they're engaged with the issue anyway. It's the difficult to reach that's always the problem. But that said, that's always been a problem for Quinjack in all areas that it looks at. All we can do is plod on and just keep on raising the profile, and hope that we just keep reaching more and more people.
Thank you, Roy. And you know, you're right. It's those who are not necessarily engaged that we want to get on board, because, you know, if you look at any of the stats around, you know, young men, especially in the construction industry, you know, the suicide rate is ridiculously high, scary high. And, you know, I've personal experience with that, because unfortunately my brother took his own life when I was in my teens. So, you know, I've seen that firsthand and the impact it can make. And I think, you know, this is why everyone on the Quinjack panel was extremely passionate about this, wanting to sort of get this right, this self-audit, and put a lot of time and effort into it, because interestingly, when we all got round the table, everyone had a story to tell about personal experiences and involvements in this issue. And, you know, talking from a personal point of view, when I've had issues around my mental fitness in my career, one of the difficult things I had was being able to articulate it. I didn't know how to describe it. I knew there was something going off, and I knew I was on a downward spiral, but trying to explain it to someone, you know, and I had people reaching out to me because they could see something was going off. They knew there was something wrong with me. Or something happening to me. Wrong with me is the wrong words, but they could see something was happening. But I couldn't explain it to them. And I thanked them for reaching out and said, look, I know, but I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say it. I don't know how to explain it. I had to make sense of it myself. And I think one of the good things is about this new information that we're talking about today. There's signposting that we've tried to pull together fantastic resources, and we've tried to sort of pitch them to say, if you're working at this in this role, these are the kind of resources that might fit you better because they probably talk to you on the right level. They might understand more about what you're going through and can relate better. But I think with all of this, and hopefully the panel agree with me, is really, we do not care who you reach out to, as long as you reach out to somebody. And you've got to talk to somebody. And whether you feel comfortable talking to an organization that specializes in it, or whether you've got someone who you work with that you confide in, or a friend you can confide in, speak to them. And like myself, find a way of explaining, you know, what it is that's happening. And even if you can't quite get it into words, at least start that journey, start that conversation off.
Yeah, I think it's important. And the most, for me, the things that I've learned is that it's creating that environment whereby somebody feels more comfortable in coming forward. And you know what? It doesn't matter if that individual, as you said, Anthony, found yourself in a position where you didn't really quite know what to say or how to articulate it. At least we've hopefully starting to create an environment where there's someone there who's recognizing there's an issue and is prepared to talk with you and talk to you. Because even if you can't get the words out, at least you know you've got some support. And I think that's a massive help. I think, you know, the worst thing is not talking about it or ignoring it, pretending it's not happening, brush under the carpet, you know. And from a personal experience that I have, for somebody sort of removed, but somebody I know, sadly took their own life last year by jumping under a train in America. They live in America, I should make that point clear. And that individual had actually been to see their therapist that morning. And it's quite obvious that for some reason, that individual didn't feel that they could say exactly how they were feeling, because they must have been planning what they were going to do that afternoon. And it's just so tragic that they didn't feel that they could talk to somebody. And if it, you know, I'm not saying that I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that the therapist was doing anything wrong. Where the issue was the individual clearly hadn't reached a point where they felt that they could talk to somebody. And you just wonder whether in fact they could have just said something that morning and it just might have saved their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, all these are tragic stories that we always look back on and start asking ourselves questions. You know, what could we have done anything different? Should we have seen it? And you know, it's awful when you have to do that in hindsight. But you know, I think all of the guidance that we've done regarding the self-audit and the signposting is here are some fantastic resources that we've looked into as a group, as a Quinjack group of volunteers, and said, yeah, this is great. This is great resource. This can help people. And for God's sake, contact them, reach out to them if you're in that position.
Yeah, I think, you know, what we have to recognize is that people who are in a really, really difficult position are often very, very, very good at hiding it. You know, we've heard this. I'm sure everybody's heard stories of saying, "Oh, I never would have thought so and so would have done anything like that." And even their close friends and family will say the same thing. But they were happy. They were fine. Clearly, they weren't. And I think we shouldn't beat ourselves up sometimes about the fact that we think that maybe we should have spotted something. They say that the people are very, very clever at hiding the way they're feeling. For those people, it's about creating an environment where they feel they can say something, because that's the only way we're going to uncover what's going on in their heads.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think some of the Oscar winner actors are ones who are covering up something that's really taking a toll on them. Julia, coming to you now, because obviously you've got experience not just being of a mental health first aider yourself, but delivering training to other people in the industry. So, how's your experience gone with delivering that training to people, and what kind of feedback are you having from those individuals who you've trained?
In regards to positive feedback, or in regards to what they've done afterwards, or?
Yeah, well, either. Let's go with both.
Okay. To be honest, I have taught a number of mental health first aiders, and we always talk about it's good to talk to each other, but also it's also important to have support for those mental health first aiders as well within your organisations, because if they are having conversation, we've had many conversations with people who've been trained, and that they also need support, because if they are the contact for people who are going through so much, we need to make sure there's a network in there. So what we did from that is some of the organisations decided to come up with regular meetings for those mental health first aiders who had gone through the training, making sure they're talking to each other about their experiences, but obviously being aware of that confidentiality for those individuals as well. But some of them have also created work groups, also WhatsApp groups that can chat to each other about their experiences as well. I know there's a lot of helpful apps out there as well, which if you go to the resources in the self-audit, there's a lot of apps there that can help you going forward as well. Me personally, the training from my point of view as well, I'm not really a judgmental person anyway, but it really taught me about, and it's taught other people who have gone through the training as well, about how important it is to realise that everybody is individual. Okay, everybody's an individual, and because they react to a certain situation doesn't mean they might have gone through different bumps in the road in their lives. Okay, so you need to be mindful that that person might have been through more traumatic life events, etc. And it's good. It was good to have those conversations. So a lot of the people who have gone through the training have either experienced themselves, issues with mental health at one time or another, and we all have, but also have known people who've maybe suffered with an illness. So it was good to have those conversations as well with those individuals. I hope that's answered your question.
It has, Julie, and roughly how many first aid trainers have you trained up now?
I think it is about 300. I think
Wow.
300. I think, or maybe a bit more.
And I take it, Julie, that's across a range of different businesses and sizes of business as well.
Yeah, we have trained outside of the industry as well, because it's a course that's for anyone. It's not specific to the industry, even though we do have specific conversations for those in the industry. But it's there's other people, probably another 100 we've done outside the industry as well.
That's fantastic. And I know there's also been some talk about perhaps first aid or mental health first aiders, and the kind of wording of that kind of, it's not a role, but that training. I know in our working group times to say, maybe we should just change the language around that as well, because if someone feels as if they have to go to a mental health first aider,
Mm-hmm.
there might be some negativity or a negative perception around that.
I know a lot of organisations have gone to like a wellbeing officer or a wellbeing person rather than a mental health first aider, and that seems to work. And I believe from conversations with people that has helped people come forward a lot more rather than speaking to a mental health first aider. But that's obviously, that suits those individuals, that's fine. With the word mental health, like I said right at the beginning, it can be a very positive word. We can have very good positive mental health. So it's not, we don't want to ignore the word, because it's important that we use it, because we don't want any stigma around it. We don't want to discriminate people about that mental health side of things. So there's a little bit of a balance there, but I do understand why people have gone with the wellbeing, so people come forward. I understand that, I really do.
Thank you, Julie.
Okay.
I think it's a good point, you know, and I think Roy alluded to it earlier. You know, we've just got to keep working on the stigma around it, if there is any exists, and then about the perception of this. And you know, we've got to make sure that everyone feels comfortable raising it. And if your environment means that you've got a culture that you have to change the word to encourage things to talk about more about well-being, then so be it. But back to the kind of Chris Rowan example, who experienced negativity when he was talking about the fact that things took a toll on his mental health, and quite rightly so, if anyone actually knows what he went through. I think it's perfectly acceptable that he talked about the fact that it took a toll on his mental health, because it would do if anyone was in that position. He shouldn't have experienced any negativity towards that, but that, I think that was a reflection of the time and period in which he raised it. However, like a lot of things these days, it's becoming more recognized, and people are accepting the fact that it is a thing, and we should just deal with it. So hopefully there's more of that. Finally, it's one of you who's put forward a question. Thank you very much, Esther. So I think a first aider part can maybe make people feel as if they had a need to be bad enough to seek first aid. I understand that. So yeah, do people feel as if they need to get to a certain level before they seek out first aid, mental health or physical? I think you probably wouldn't do that unless you're a bloke, of course. You probably wouldn't wait until something's dropping off before you'd see a doctor. But generally, with physical health, you would seek assistance for that. And I think it's important that people seek help if they feel as if something's taken a toll. I know from my experience, I wished I did earlier, but again, I wasn't really clear on what was going off to start with. But Julie, I'll come to you with on that one. So back to Esther's question, you know, does they think maybe it puts a perception in people's minds that they've got to feel bad enough to then go out and seek one of these individuals?
Obviously, it's unique to every individual, the way they think about this. But the mental health first aiders are in organisations. It's not just about illness. It's not about diagnosis, because we aren't professionals. We don't diagnose people. We are there just to have a conversation with someone as well. If they're having a bad day, or they feel a little bit stressed at work, or they feel a little bit overwhelmed, it's not about feeling ill or any. It's about just having a conversation. It might only be 5 minutes. I'm struggling a little bit. I need a little bit help with work, or I'm a bit overwhelmed. Something's happening at home. It's promoting the conversations, that things that are bothering you and that may be getting in your way a little bit to move forward in life. It's about having those conversations. So anybody can go and see a mental health first aider, even if it's just to have a sit down for 5 minutes, just to go through something they're going through. That it might pass, but just have that conversation, because we don't want anybody feeling like that and not being able to have these conversations and it go on for a long period of time. Because if it does go on for a long period of time and they don't have that 5-minute conversation that could help, it could then develop into something else.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on that.
Thank you, Julie. Phil, I can see you nodding away. So
yeah, can I sort of build on that a little bit as well? I know I mentioned that we've got an employee assistance program. I know not everybody will have them, particularly maybe the smaller organisations, but if you do have a resource like that, whether it's in-house or external, that's another thing. I think people see these as a sort of crisis helpline, but if you've got an EAP, it's there to help you deal with those little bits and pieces that if you let them build, as Julie says, you'll end up with a massive issue. If you can use that advice just to help you get through the day-to-day stuff that can cause you problems, you know, it might be you might have fallen out with the neighbours, or might need some legal advice, or any number of things. Most EAPs will help you deal with those things. So don't wait until it's a massive problem and it's much more difficult to deal with.
absolutely. Thank you, Phil. And, you know, again, just bringing my personal experience, it's not all about me, but I feel comfortable raising this because anything I say, I hope I'm helping someone else. I took advantage of the EAP at Tarmac, and one thing they helped me understand is there's different levels of counselling. There's different types of counselling, should I say. And talking it through them, they gave me guidance of who might be the best person for me to talk to for my own personal thing I was going through at the time, which was really beneficial because, you know, it's making sure you get the right assistance. And who knew there was different types of counselling? I certainly didn't. That was a thing for me to learn, and that also saved me wasting a lot of time and potentially money. So Laura, thank you. It's really important to know that there's help in hand if you need support with your mental fitness, but as a manager of a team of 5, it's important to keep spirits up, try to support each other day to day. If there's a breakdown in people's mental fitness, it's easier for team members to spot and hopefully start a conversation. Yeah, and it shouldn't be just when mental health is poor. Absolutely right. And it's obviously with a team of 5, surely or hopefully it's easier to identify when someone just doesn't seem quite themselves. You know, your little voice in your head or your little spidey sensors are indicating that something's not quite right with that individual because you know them quite well. But even in big organizations, you know, you all work in particular a plant or a particular area of the office, so hopefully you still have that. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a small business. You can work in small teams, get to know each other. But you know, good on you, Laura, that your team are sort of looking out for each other, keeping each other's spirits up. I think as well, though, as Roy mentioned earlier, and I think we've alluded to a few times, some people can be very good actors and can hide things very well. So, you know, sometimes you have to be really astute to sort of spot something that could be really taking a toll on an individual. And again, I know I was a bloody good actor when I was hiding the issues with me. No one had a clue. I can guarantee you that. Julie, I'll come back to you on that one again now because of your experience in that environment and being a mental health first aider yourself. So, you know, a team of 5 people, we're all keeping each other's spirits up and having that camaraderie. What about in that environment? Would it be easy to spot someone, or, you know, is that just a good way of working, would you say?
Going back to what everybody said, really, it's about having the right environment. Going back to what Laura said there, sounds like she's a good manager, but it's about, yeah, you would hopefully notice somebody with an individual, but like you say, people are very good at hiding what they're going through as well. But sometimes there's some telltale signs as well. So there's the fight or flight response. Some people will hide things or will go very quiet. Some people might get a little bit more loud or sometimes aggressive, which that can be a telltale sign. But yes, there's always a possibility that it can be quite invisible. But if you, like Laura's alluded to there, if you have a close community within the environment that you work in, your work environment, you are more likely to see a change in a person. So it's important that if you are a manager, for me, this is my personal opinion, I think everybody should have some sort of mental health awareness training, or and it should be part of that training process for managers, I think, the mental health side of things. But having the right environment is really important, so you can spot those signs if somebody is, you know, struggling.
Thank you very much, Julie.
Okay.
So I think unless Phil or Roy's got anything to come in with this point, we'll start to look at the self-audit.
Well, if I just raise one thing, actually, I think retrospectively, the title mental health first aider probably isn't the most helpful. But having said that, I think the genie's out the bottle. And I think what it's down to for us now is, we've got the title, we really need to make efforts to explain exactly what that means.
Thank you, Roy. Phil, anything to add?
I think I think I just echo what the others have said, really. I think, you know, we've got, we've had mental health first aids in the business for a while now, and it's kind of, we're trying to move into talking about well-being more holistically. But I do think people recognise the role of a mental health first aider, and you know, it's, I wouldn't say it's a brand maybe almost, but I think it'd be great if we can move to a place where we're talking about, you know, wellbeing champions rather than mental health first aiders. But I think for the time being, we're probably just going to stick with what we've got, because it's a recognised process. People know when they volunteer what they're signing up to, really. But yeah, I do think it'd be good to sort of start to maybe use slightly different language, you know, more about well-being than just about mental health. You know, we're trying to deal with the whole person, you know, physical, mental, financial, social, whatever, however you want to package it up, but look at it as a holistic approach.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. So again, if anyone's got any other questions or comments or points they want to raise, please put it in the comment box. But what I'll do now is I'm going to just share my screen, and we'll just take a look at the actual self-audit that we've been talking about. And I'll just talk you through, provided my technology works, I'll talk you through what that is all about. Okay. Julie, can you just tell me if that's appeared correctly as I hoped? Okay, Roy's giving me the thumbs up. Thank you very much. I'm used to Teams. I'm not used to Zoom. So again, this is taking a toll on my mental well-being, of anxiety levels building up. So the self-audit, as you can see on the screen, is we've got some key points. There's a bit of an overview explaining what this is. And it says that, you know, straight away, 1 in 4 people in the UK can experience a very low mental wealth at some point. We've got some information provided by the Health and Safety Executive. No one will be surprised about that. And as Roy's mentioned earlier, you know, this is a key focus area as well for the HSE. They will be raising this and talking about what people are doing regarding well-being and for mental health first aid, risk assessments and things like that, which we'll also be providing in this QuinJack guidance. We've got some risk assessment templates to use. And also, I was with Roy yesterday at a BAA Health and Safety forum meeting for the BAA, and we had Mike Tetley there. Mike did say that they'll be using these self-audits. They're asking about these self-audits in site visits. So again, it's probably worth taking for you all to take a look at these. So further down in the document is the actual scope of this self-audit. So just goes through there with, again, some comments brought in from the Health and Safety Executive. Next thing is really about carrying out the audit, and you know, it's important to understand the difference between perception and actual, perception and reality. Some people who fill this in, who might be at a certain level, will perceive the way things are happening in the business. The way we encourage self-audits to be carried out is as collaborative. Make sure you get as many people involved in this as possible. Don't just limit it to key individuals. Is again, just use the Core Reg 40 approach. You could use your health and safety committee, but obviously try to bring as many other participants as you can to get a really good view of what's happening, and then you'll get your reality. And I think what the group said all right at the beginning from Phil and from Roy is be honest, be brutally honest. If this is where you are, that is where you are. And there's no point trying to pull the wool over anyone's eyes. Useful references. No one should be surprised that we've used the HSG 65 Plan, Do, Check, Act as an inspiration for the way we've laid out this self-audit. We've produced some useful links straight away here. So again, if people are wanting some help and support, If you're not quite sure where to go to for this, we've put you some links in straight away. And there is an accompanying document, a signposting document, that takes all of these links and more, but helps tailor it to specific employee groups to try and make it easier. I'll just scroll through that. And then you get onto the self-audit itself. Now, this works in two different ways. We've tried to make it an interactive PDF. What I mean by that is you can click buttons and then you can type in the comments for your action against each point. So you just basically work through your questions. And of course, if you're old school like me and like to print stuff out and scribble all over it, absolutely, you can do that. However you do it, I really don't care as long as you do it. So if you want to print it out and write on it, by all means, or if you want to use this interactive PDF, but again, try to get as many views as you possibly can when completing this in. So the first question, does your company, or does the company acknowledge workplace mental health and well-being as an important issue for the business? That's a good start, isn't it? Because if the answer's no, well, the rest of it's kind of pointless. So, you know, do recognize that this is an important issue. And I think, you know, we're all recognizing this with a lot of the kind of publicity, the Melts in Mind and everything else that's going off. Is it's a problem that we've been a long time that we need to talk about, and we're now starting to talk about it. So again, these first few questions are just really trying to set up where your business is. Whereabouts are you culturally regarding this topic in your planning? Further down is we're getting to the doing now. So, you know, have you got a policy or an equivalent to a policy around well-being or mental health? Phil, are you waving at me?
No, sorry, I was rubbing my hands together.
All right, okay. I didn't know if you would just give me a wave because you had a comment. So again, does your company, like Julie said, do you even provide any kind of mental health awareness training? Because again, it'd be good for all kind of supervisory management levels to have that awareness training at least. Does your company have a risk assessment for stress in their workplace? And guess what? The Quinjack working group have actually provided some of these for you, so you can download them. Excuse me. So we've tried to make it a simple document for you to fill in as possible. You've just got simple yes or no boxes to understand. Yes, I've got that. No. All right. If it's a no, what are you going to do about it? And then right at the very end, it's an action plan. And you'll see that the HSE have provided some text on this to show their involvement and the fact that they endorse this particular document. So with just a few minutes left to go, I'm going to stop sharing that and we'll just come back to you all. This information is not available on the website as yet, on the Quinjack website. It is due to go live next week. We're just waiting for final approvals. But what I wanted to do is give you all of the heads up that this is coming. There's fantastic resources. There is some signposting to fantastic links to get help and support and advice, whether you're an employee, whether you're an employer, doesn't matter. We've got guidance for you all, as well as the risk assessments. So with the final few minutes as closing, please feel free to ask any questions or anything you want to throw up while you're typing, which I'm hoping you're all doing now. I'll just do a quick whiz around my panel, and Roy, I'll just come to yourself because you've got experience obviously dealing as a former HSE inspector with large companies and now supporting SMEs and independents. You know, what's your view of this particular self-audit for these employers?
It's like all Quinjack self-audits. It's an excellent resource. I can't think why anybody wouldn't want to do it. It's there to help you. You know, I think one of the things that we've got to get into our heads as well is it's not just about compliance with the law. It's about doing the right thing, and that's morally as well as in a business sense. You know, I mean, I've banged on for years about L118 being one of the best manuals ever written on how to run a quarry. And it's got nothing to do with whether it's about health and safety. That's how you run a quarry efficiently. And it's exactly the same with these self-audits. So yeah, I totally support them and could recommend anybody to do it.
Thank you, Roy. Yeah, I'm not sure I can add to that. Phil, obviously in a large business like Tarmac, where you've got multiple units and perhaps even some micro cultures regarding some of your bigger units down to your smaller units, how would you see this self-audit working?
Well, first thing, I wish we'd had it when we started this journey, because it would have been a big help rather than sort of muddle our way through it all. But yeah, it just kind of steps out what you need to be looking at, what you need to be thinking about, what things you should have in place, and ultimately by going through that process, you'll end up with a plan. You can prioritize where to put your effort in. So yeah, it's an easy thing to follow, and it will help you plan how you need to get to where you need to get to.
Brilliant, thank you. And Julie, your experience of training first aiders and individuals, employees within businesses, you're talking, to these individuals are perhaps on a different level, managerial level to more operational people. So how would you see this sort of self-audit working with those individuals at that level?
Then going back to what Phil said, it's a shame we didn't have a resource like this before, I suppose, for any organisation, but we do, I do train managers, but I also train anyone within organisations, not just the management. And I will certainly be mentioning this at all the training sessions going forward about this useful resource once it's available. So it'll give them a tool to actually go away with, even though we do give them other things to go away with. I think this is something that I'm going to use going forward in any of the training courses that we do.
Fantastic. We're just coming up to the top of the hour, which we put an hour in for this, so almost we're going to be a minute over, so that's not bad. Again, these resources are going to be available. It is fantastic. All of the working group were passionate and put in a heck of a lot of time putting this together, because they all wanted to help individuals and businesses with this. And I'm so grateful being able to sort of talk to my panel, and I want to thank Julie, I want to thank Phil and Roy for attending today, who were all part of that Quinjack working group, who put so much time and effort into putting this together. It is a fantastic resource. It is going to be there. Mental Health Awareness Week is next week. Couldn't be better timing to start looking at this. And if you are going to use these resources, please put it out on social media that you're using these resources, and any stories, any feedback we get, the Quinjack working group would love to hear that, because it's fantastic putting this together, and everyone's passionate about it. What we want to know is that it's making a difference in the workplace, and this is what Quinjack's all about, is helping individuals stay safe, efficient, productive, go to work safe, go home safe, and back to their families safe. So I thank my panel. I want to thank you all for taking your time out of your busy schedules to be with us for the IQ Midlands branch of this launch of these Quinjack resources. Thanks for those who asked some questions, brilliant questions from you. And once again, thanks. Good luck. Look after your mental well-being and invest in it. Thank you all for attending.